Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here for tonight's intentional hiking event. I am really pleased to have author and Bigfoot Trail founder Michael Kauffmann here tonight. Michael's going to discuss the natural beauty of the Klamath Mountains and the 360-mile Bigfoot Trail he created. In creating this trail, he's blending his love of long-distance backpacking with a scavenger hunt for 32 different conifer species. The trail offers a deeper understanding of the botanical wonders in the region, and I think it'll be great to take a deep dive into what is out there in the Klamath region. So I am your host, Renee Shira Patrick, Shira being my trail name, and I'm an addicted long-distance hiker who discovered the amazing and empowering feeling of spending extended time on trails over 22 years ago now with my first thru hike on the Appalachian Trail. I created this event series to help myself and others in the hiking community like you develop a culture of thoughtfulness and intention about the time we spend outside on trails. So thank you for being here. Please use the chat throughout the event. You can share any comments or reactions as we go on. I'll ask a question or two and have you weigh in on the chat as well. And feel free to keep your video on. We'll get into a discussion portion of the event later on where I think it's great to see each other. Again, you don't have to have it on for the whole event, but in the discussion section might be nice and help create that sense of community if we can see each other. And finally, I want to thank Jess, who's providing back-end support during the event today. So for those of you joining for this first time, each intentional hiking event will be focused on one of the following themes: do, learn, create, be, and a regional focus. And even though this event series has been on for over a year now, this is my first regional focus event. We're going to be immersing ourselves in the Klamath Mountains of Northern California and a tiny bit of Southern Oregon, and the diverse plant life that thrives in this extraordinary ecosystem. I'm bringing you all together through these events because we are a powerful force for change. Beyond developing an intentional hiking practice in our own personal trail experiences, I think the impacts and effects of our actions can help influence the world around us. So like I said, intentional hiking just recently passed the 1-year mark, and I wanted to share one of the ways we've made a collective impact on behalf of people and place over that year. So when I invite a speaker to come on intentional hiking, I ask them to choose a nonprofit that we will raise money for during event registration. And when someone registers, as many of you did for this event, you get the option to donate to that organization. 1/3 of the proceeds will go to that nonprofit, 1/3 to the speaker, and 1/3 to support the event series. Some speakers opt to give their speaker fee to the nonprofit, as Michael did tonight with his chosen Bigfoot Trail Alliance nonprofit partner. And let's see, one second. Through donations, attendees have contributed and donated $1,375.50 to 16 different organizations. I'm deeply grateful for all the participants, some of whom who are with us here today, who contributed. Many of the donations were a modest $5 or $10 each, and it really goes to show how much that it can all add up if we work together. Small individual actions really do make a difference, and I'm proud to be on the journey with you to becoming more intentional in this work. So thank you. I'm also marking the transition into the second year of the series with a few changes to the events. First, I'm going to hold one event per month instead of 2 events as I initially started last year. Next, not all events will have a gear giveaway. So the giveaways, while fun to provide, took up a lot of my time when putting these events together. So I still welcome businesses who want to provide gear items as giveaways during this series, but it's not going to be where I focus my attention. Next, I want to experiment with the discussion portion of the events. My original vision was to have small groups join breakout rooms at the end of the event to have conversations based on the topic and to get to know each other and create connections between all of you. I've been in some really interesting small group conversations, but I've also noticed that some people leave the event before that portion of the evening. And in the in-person intentional hiking events I've had, we stay in one big group for a discussion. And those conversations can be very engaging, and the participants enjoy being part of the larger group. So tonight, we're going to do away with the small breakout rooms and instead open the floor to a discussion right after Michael's presentation and a few Q&A questions with him. So, like I said, after the Q&A, we can pivot to a wider discussion. I might experiment with different formats this year, and ultimately would love to hear from you what you found interesting and impactful. So that's your homework. Please let me know your thoughts and suggestions on how tonight's format goes and other ways that you can think of to improve the series. So let's get to the topic at hand. So this one is, I want to see from all of you, let's see a raise of hands, either real or emoji. How many of you get excited about plant diversity when you're out hiking? Who loves exploring? Okay, next question. How many of you like to identify, find, record, or track the plant life you find when you're on a trail? Nice. And this one's for the chat. What about the practice of paying attention to the specifics of an ecosystem appeals to you? Is it the discovery that makes a place unique? Is it you feel more connected to the landscape? I'd love to hear what about that paying attention and that practice appeals to you. So go ahead and add that into the chat while I continue on. So I'm going to admit that until recently, I never really paid attention to the plant life along the trails that I hike. I think part of that stems from starting to through hike over 20 years ago when I was in a more self-centered place. I've always been very aware of my experience in nature and my body moving through space and along trails, but not so much in getting to know the broader world around me. That's a big part of why I wanted to create this discussion series. I think it was identifying that I wanted to deepen my relationship to nature and place and to be more intentional in that engagement as I spend more time on trails. So I'm grateful for the last 9 years that I've been helping to develop the Oregon Desert Trail. So this is a 750-mile long route in southeastern Oregon, because this was the first time I paid attention to the issues that affected the trail around me. I mean, it was quite literally my job to educate other hikers on what made that place unique and to encourage their participation in caring for the habitat, stewarding the ecosystem, and in advocating for protection of a place that just happened to be the container for a recreation experience I was helping to create. Until recently, as I've started to engage more with plant life and such, I've been using primarily iNaturalist to record observations of the plants and animals I saw, but the missing piece was knowing what I was looking at. I often had to rely on other iNaturalist users to identify the observations for me. So when I started using the Seek app recently, I became much more engaged and excited by what I was seeing. Seek helps identify what you're looking at, and it made a huge difference to someone like me who often knows very little about what I'm looking at. So speaking of iNaturalist, I'd like to point you to an intentional hiking event I held in January with botanist Matt Sheriff Woody Berger. Matt talked about learning how to identify botanical treasures on trail and making the time long distance hiking to collect those observations. So tonight, I'm excited to have Michael Kauffmann on to give us an even richer perspective on creating a trail to celebrate treasures hidden in the diverse plant life that thrives in a place like the Klamath Mountains. I know that I'll have a thing or two to learn from Michael and hope to continue to evolve my relationship to place by paying closer attention to what makes it unique. So with that, Michael, I'll pass the presentation on to you.
All right, thanks. You just stirred up so many memories. I pulled out my Continental Divide Trail journal, and I'll show you a couple of my entries from 2002 based on conifers and birds. And yeah, I think I really appreciate what you're doing, Renee. And that's really the gist of why I created the Bigfoot Trail. So let me get into it here. Well, and it's good to see so many familiar faces and names as well. All right. Okay, so this is a trail for the trees, and I'm going to talk. Is that showing up? First, I should ask, is that showing up well for everybody? Okay, so this is a trail for the trees. It's a trail for plants. It's trail for nature. It's trail for connecting to one of the most amazing temperate coniferous forests on planet Earth. First, I'd like to start with a quick land acknowledgement. The rich and stunning lands along the route of the Bigfoot Trail include the traditional, ancestral, and present homelands of a number of indigenous nations. These lands were taken from these communities during an extended period of forced removal and genocide that has had far-reaching impacts. Yet these people have been and continue to be stewards of this land. We honor and acknowledge the strength and resilience of these communities that came before us, that are with us now, and the future of indigenous peoples in the area. The Bigfoot Trail Alliance as an organization is still working to uncouple our organization from this unjust history and welcomes the opportunity to continue to learn from our communities. So a little bit about me. This is me in somewhere in Montana on the Continental Divide Trail. I think right before I dropped into Yellowstone, as I remember it. But I am an educator. I've worked in public education in some form or fashion since 1996. I was an educator here in Humboldt County for 19 years. I taught middle school mostly. I'm also an author. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. I'm an ecologist. I currently work now for through grant contracts with Cal Poly Humboldt and the California Native Plant Society on vegetation mapping across the Klamath Mountains. I've come to learn I'm an intentional hiker. I really enjoy that term, so I thought I'd add it in there. And I also founded the Bigfoot Trail. My wife gave me quite a bit of help as well, but back in about end of 2015. I'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. How did I get into all this business? Well, I wrote this book. I started this book in like 2002 when I first moved to Humboldt County after hiking the Continental Divide Trail. And I hiked the CDT, and I'm going to show you my tree list here because I think this is a good time for it. Oh, goodness gracious. I got this disappearing screen thing. So here's my tree list. I should take a picture of this and put it somewhere. And there's like, oh, and I was holding it upside down even. Slick. So there's all my conifers. And on the Continental Divide Trail, there's about 24 species of conifers. And includes the Rocky Mountain stuff up north, all the way down to the influence from the Sierra Madre in Mexico to the south. And on the Bigfoot Trail, there are 32 species, and it's the Continental Divide Trail. I hiked about 2,600 miles. I didn't get to do all of that trail that year because of lots of snow in Glacier National Park. But in 360 miles, you can see about 25% more conifers in Northwest California. So I got here and I was blown away by the conifer diversity. I started writing this book. It became a master's degree. It's now in a second edition that I just printed last year. With updates and a few of the hikes changed, but this is also 25 hikes to learn the conifers, and obviously the Bigfoot Trail is one of them. So in 2009, while I was working on conifer country, I decided I was going to try to connect the wilderness areas of Northwest California, and I wanted to start in the Yola because that's actually this spot right here is the southern tip of the Klamath Mountains, and I also wanted to use the routes through those wilderness areas to be able to see all or most of the 32 species of conifers. So that's how it became a trail for the trees. And this is the map that well, this is actually the revised map, but my original route I thought was going to work and it didn't really work. So I started, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But I started the route in the Yola. This is the first day on the trail. I was joined by a few friends for the first night, and then it was kind of all me with some nice meetups along the way. And I should take a step back. I wanted to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, but my wife said, "Well, why don't you try to do something a little closer, and then I can come meet you on weekends and bring you food supplies." And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. So instead of, venturing out on the Pacific Crest Trail, I decided I was going to try to do this route through the Klamath. And I'm just going to show you a few highlights along the way. There's some really big trees. This is an incense cedar. I think this is probably the third largest incense cedar on planet Earth. It's right along the Bigfoot Trail in the Marbles. Some glorious views from the Marble Mountains. This is actually along or just off the Pacific Crest Trail. The Bigfoot Trail overlaps with the PCT and the Marbles for about 30 miles from Marble Valley to Syed Valley. Here is a picture of that Pacific Crest Trail. This is dropping out of Marble Valley. Going into the Siskiyou Wilderness, this is Preston Peak. Southern range extension for a species called yellow cedar, Calotropsis nucatensis, that only really lives from here north. This is the southern part, and then it gets much more common as you move up into Canada and Alaska. This is me above the Smith River drainage, getting ready to drop toward the Pacific Ocean. You can kind of see back over my right shoulder there, the haze of the Pacific Ocean. The trail passes through the Grove of the Titans and the largest redwood trees on planet Earth, and Redwood National and State Park up there, Jedediah Smith. And then it ends on the Pacific Ocean in Crescent City. So that's just a real quick kind of overview of the hike itself. And there's a lot more stuff that I've put out there on YouTube and on the website that can give you more detail about that. But along the way, I ran into a lot of this. This is a picture that my friend Jacob just took in the Siskiyou Wilderness. And I'm hitting stuff like this as I'm walking, and I'm starting to think, oh man, these trails haven't been maintained in 20 years. And that sort of inspired me, took me a step closer towards thinking about ways to maintain these trails. And ironically, I was on this section of trail 3 years ago, lopping and removing logs. So this is only 3 years in the Klamath Mountains. This area sees about 80 inches of precipitation a year. So these plants grow fast. You can see that a fire came through here, kind of a high intensity, maybe in some areas low intensity pockets, kind of wiped out the trees. Those trees start to fall. So there's a lot of work and there's a lot of maintenance that the Forest Service needs help with. And that's a kind of a small niche that we began to fill. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But basically in 2015, I decided I was going to file for 501c3 status. And I launched a Kickstarter campaign that raised almost $15,000. And I was able to pay someone to help me with all the paperwork. And we also had a little nest egg to launch this nonprofit. And this is our mission statement. I won't read it to you. But the idea is we're caring about the trails, we're caring about people's connection to the natural world, and broadening that mission just a little bit to include other trails, as I'll mention in a minute. We have a board of directors. We aim to keep 12 diverse board members who will serve 1 term of 3 years or 2 terms if they'd like to come back. This is one of our hiking treks at a board retreat a few years ago. We do have a community science aspect to the Bigfoot Trail. We have an iNaturalist project, and if you go to iNaturalist and search for the Bigfoot Trail, we ask people. Actually, it's a collection project, so it's what that means is if you put an observation in within a quarter mile on either side of the Bigfoot Trail, it'll get captured by this project. And that is another way to sort of maybe promote the diversity of the region, to understand the diversity of the region. We have several other several other community science projects, including the Rose Foundation funded me to put in sort of plots at the highest points, 6 highest points in wilderness areas. So it goes through 6 wilderness areas. These plots are at the 6 highest points. And we encourage people to stop at those points, and they're on our website, they're on our GPX track, and take pictures in the cardinal directions and upload those. And we're looking at change over time. So what's going on in these places? So a couple of the community science projects that we're promoting as an organization. Oh, whoops, here's the picture of what I just talked about, but you can see from the Yoloboli to the Trinity Alps, to the Russian Wilderness, to the Marble Mountains, to the Red Buttes, to the Siskiyous. These are the 6 high points on the trail. The highest point on the trail is Packers Peak here in the Trinity Alps. And so you can see the trail doesn't get, it's not like the Sierra, right? We're not getting, continuous mileage at, 10 or 12,000 feet. Actually, I remember the CDT, I think I spent 200 miles above 12,000 feet. Is that right? Or 10,000 feet? I forget. It's in my journal. But there's an insane amount of high elevation in the Continental Divide Trail through Colorado in particular. Here, not so much, but still high enough elevation to get some interesting sort of dichotomy in the landscape that you see. We also work with organizations across the Klamath Mountains. These are all nonprofits that serve their communities. They serve small rural communities across the region. With education, with outreach, with professional development for youth into the future. So we have a grant that's funded by the Cowell Foundation where we work on place-based curriculum that kids can share. So we have a game camera curriculum where kids set up a game camera at their school and they take pictures and they share that between schools. So one school might get to see that a mountain lion walked through another school's campus. And we promote classroom visits with this curriculum, again, community science, and then college career awareness. So we see the Bigfoot Trail as a connector between these communities in a way to sort of bridge the isolation. I mean, these are really isolated places, right? Happy Camp, High and Palm, Hay Fork. These are places that are hard to get to, hard to get out of. So it sort of connects those kids between those communities. We also do a lot of trail work now as an organization. One of our highlights of the year is the CCC Bigfoot Trail Siskiyou Wilderness Collaborative. And if anyone's familiar with the CCCs, they have a backcountry trails program that works backcountry trails across California. It's about 90 people that they recruit every year into these programs. And what I do is in mid-July or early July, I write letters to all the groups, and there's 6 different groups. They're spread out in the Inyo National Forest or Yosemite or the Klamath National Forest. Send them a letter and I invite them to apply. And what's wild about this backcountry trails program is they have no phones, they have no technology. So they got to scrounge together a stamp and a pen and a piece of paper, and they write me back and they tell me why they want to join us. And then I write them back again and say, hey, we'd love to have you. And we offer them a stipend. This year, we were able to offer them $1,000 each to come spend 8 days in the Siskiyou Wilderness with us. And the amount of work that this crew does is off the hook. And you can see there's some younger kids there. That's my son in the bottom right corner, and his buddy next to him. And, so we try to, selfishly, I'm getting my family involved in some of this stuff because it's so much fun. But it's just a really powerful experience to meet these up and coming young leaders in the backcountry and spend some time with them and work with them. So one example of some of the stuff that we do. We do trail work across 4 national forests. We've recently put together a regional challenge, regional master challenge cost share agreement. I still don't have it right. It's hard to say. But what that means is if money comes to the forests and they need to put it towards trails, it's a lot easier to send the money to the Bigfoot Trail Alliance as a partner. And we now have agreements with all of these forests to do work over the next 4 years in deep remote wilderness areas. We have a family trip every year. This is, of course, inspired by, I have two young whippersnappers. One right here is my son Asa, and this is my son Silas. This is a trip we took into the Russian wilderness, very close to the Pacific Crest Trail. We didn't quite get on the PCT this year, but we're crosscut certified, so we can use these saws in the backcountry. Even the young people can use these saws in the backcountry as long as they're with an adult, obviously. So super fun trip there. Other kind of pictures of trail work. Karen's on the call or on the video right now. Here's Karen working Woolly Creek. Just about, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, we had a crew back on Woolly Creek, opening up one of the most remote places in California, deep in the Marble Mountains. So here's a before. This is in the Russian wilderness. This is actually the Pacific Crest Trail. We usually try to work on the Bigfoot Trail, but this year a fire started. Probably heard about it if you're followed the trails. The Shelley fire started in the marbles, so we weren't allowed to go there. So they sent us to the Russians. Here's the PCT before. Here's the PCT after. This team worked, I think it was 5 miles of trail all in the wilderness and removed some absurd number of logs. This is after the Whites fire, the 2014 Whites fire. So that manzanita does really well after the fire. And I'd imagine there's probably a few conifers creeping up through there as well. Now, how do we do all this? Well, we definitely have the support of the Forest Service. This is Ellen Andrews. She's a legendary packer for the Klamath National Forest. And we love working with her. She brings a mule team from the Klamath. Sometimes we hire private packers, but this allows us to get into the backcountry with all the tools, with all the stuff we need to stay for a week and get work done. This is Ken Graves. There's another legendary packer on the Shasta Trinity packing the crew into the into the Yola this summer. And I think, Karen, this is your picture. Probably should have given some credit here, but so you can see they put coolers on the packs and get some tasty food in. We have a nice camp set up. This is in the Marbles up near the Pacific Crest Trail in near Marble Valley at Elk Lake. And we have all sorts of good food when we're in the backcountry. So this is, pretty motivating for folks to be able to have a nice meal both in the morning and when you get back from a long day of work. And here's my son Silas cooking up some wild chanterelles that we found along the trail as well in the mornings. So this year, just to kind of summarize what we were able to achieve, this was our biggest year ever. We had 77 different volunteers, 71 miles of trail we maintained, 762 logs removed, and over 4,000 volunteer hours. And you can get a sense of the breadth of what we cover from the Yola all the way up through some non-wilderness trails around Hayfork to the Trinity Alps to the Russian wilderness to the Marbles to the Siskiyous. So I'm pretty proud of all that work. As I mentioned, we do some youth education, and I got some grants through Cal Poly Humboldt this year where we're able to fund some professionals' time to go into the backcountry and do vegetation surveys with rural youth from across the Klamath Mountains. And I partnered with Ascend Wilderness Experience to get some of this stuff done. And they had actually enough funds to be able to provide these youth a stipend for their time learning these skills in the Trinity Alps. We partner with other, like I've mentioned before, nonprofits like the Watershed Center, but also College of the Redwoods. So this is Dennis Houghton. Dennis is an expert trail builder here on the coast, and he brings his class to the Bigfoot Trail once a year and gives them real world experience on backcountry trails. So in 2025, our goals are to have 15 work trips at least with weekends and week long. We're trying to sculpt it so we have more weekend trips that folks can join. These are mostly funded by the National Forest, but also funded by volunteer donations to the, not volunteer, but just donations to the Bigfoot Trail Alliance. And we're going to continue to have youth science trips and family trips. So that is sort of my overview of the Bigfoot Trail. I went a little bit light on pretty pictures and trees, but basically I wanted to highlight all of the things that we do as an organization and hopefully stimulate some conversation around what we do, maybe what other trail organizations do, and some of the wonders of the Klamath. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Michael. Before I get into some questions and the discussion, I wanted to mention that we are raising money for the Bigfoot Trail Alliance tonight, and Michael touched on, what that organization does, the stewardship and fostering community. So through your donations, you all raised $200 tonight for the Bigfoot Trail Alliance. So
Great.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. I appreciate that. And that'll
Yeah.
go into our general fund. There's often, this year, one of our priorities, or I should say 2025, one of our priorities is a trail in the Siskiyou Wilderness to get deeper into the wilderness later in the year with the CCC crew. So the Klamath didn't have money for it. There hasn't been a fire that burned through, so we couldn't get trail work money for it. So we have to rely on, people that are here tonight and others that are dedicated, participants in the Bigfoot Trail Alliance to raise those extra funds. So thanks a lot.
Yeah. So I've got a couple questions, then I'll open it up to all of you. First, I love stories. Do you have any stories about hikers that have tried to find all 32 conifer species? Like, how did they get there, or what mishaps, or anything that comes to mind with that hunt?
Yes, I do and I don't. I think what's interesting about the Bigfoot Trail, like when I hiked the CDT, I was in touch with I think his name was Jim Wolf, the Wolf Guides. Like this, I reached out to him. I called him from like Landers, Wyoming, and I was like, "Hey, I got a question for you." I don't hear from as many people. I don't know if times have changed and or this is like a experience, like a clandestine experience for people where they want to not be on like the super highway and try a quieter, more off the beaten path trail. So my point is I don't hear from as many people as I thought I would about hiking the trail. Now that all being said, I've definitely heard from folks. Mary Court is on the call. She's hiked the Bigfoot Trail. She can speak to this as well. But there's definitely fun experiences, where I get a picture of somebody holding conifer country in the Marble Mountains next to a Pacific silver fir, which is a rare tree in California, and thanking me for, keying them into this sort of thing. So that sort of stuff's really rewarding and satisfying, when that sort of thing happens. But I am trying to collect more trail stories. And I didn't mention this earlier, but we have launched a podcast, and I did the first interview with someone who did about 200 miles of the trail this summer. And, same thing. Like she was really into the tree scavenger hunt. So, that's it's a fun little listen, about 20 minutes of conversation with her. So anyway, lots of stories. I could tell you my first hike. I'll tell one more story. When I first hiked, 2009, I like walked out of my seventh grade classroom. I went to the trailhead with my partner and some friends, and I just started walking north. And I everything was great. I hit the Trinity River. I went to the Straw Bale House, which, if you're familiar, moving between Arcata and Redding, it's a great little coffee house, and had a nice little meal. And then you can cross the street and you can walk up according to the trails on the maps of the Trinity Alps Wilderness. You should be able to walk right into the Trinity Alps. Well, I got about 3 miles or 4 miles up in there, and the trail started to deteriorate. And before I knew it, there was no trail anymore. And I spent about a day wandering through canyons and up rivers, and finally hit another. There's actually another road that sort of loops in there to the North Fork of the Trinity Alps, and that was one of the come to reality moments for me, that I realized that life is short, and there's a lot of trail work that needs to be done. Like that was the most scared that I've probably been in my life. Like I didn't know if I was going to come out of there. So I've hence rerouted from that spot. I'd love to rebuild that trail and maybe get that route back as the main corridor of the Bigfoot Trail. But there's just a lot of, I mean, that's really a reality of the Bigfoot Trail, is it's not easy. Um, it's becoming easier as we do this trail work, but it's not an easy trail to walk.
Yeah, there's a couple questions coming in the chat, and feel free to keep adding those, anyone. I've got one more before I get to some of them. Um, So how did you first find these conifer species? Did you have GPS coordinates? I imagine it was before, it was
Oh
before
yeah, it was way before that.
iNaturalist and everything. How did you find those species and decide to put those ones on the map?
Yeah, well, that was my master's degree, right? It was a
Oh,
mapping and ecology. I basically wrote a natural history of regional conifers. So you're right. It wasn't, there was some data, online databases like the CalFlora app, uh, where it very early primitive website stuff. You could also look up herbarium records, but I did a lot of reading and research. And, there wasn't a lot known about where these trees were in Northwest California, at least written. There's a lot of oral tradition of, hey, I heard this tree's there. But I did a lot of walking to find those trees, and that's why that master's degree really, it took about 10 years to materialize because there was so much work beforehand. So
so then the trail is because of the trees. The line
exactly.
emerged because that's where the trees were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At least, and also again connecting those wilderness areas. But yeah, that the idea behind it was, hey, can we get close to the Pacific silver fir deep in the Marble Mountains? Could I find Baker cypress along the route? So trying to navigate that trail. So it was also, you could have just jumped on the PCT and walked for 100 miles, but I was trying to kind of keep it a little bit different than that as well. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a question from Lewis. Are there any other video logs like the YouTube one from 11 Skies? Folks who've hiked the trail and shared their videos at
So
all.
I have an ancient YouTube channel that I started in 2010 and I haven't added to it, but I realized the other day that I no longer have those videos linked into the Bigfoot Trail website, so I need to do that. But if you look for Michael Kauffmann on YouTube, I do have sections, videos of each section. It's about 5 minutes, videos from each part of the Bigfoot Trail. And so there's some of that guy 11 Sky was not a big fan of the Bigfoot Trail, so I wouldn't encourage anyone to watch that video. He was trying to do like the fastest time, and
Hmm.
I feel like he missed the boat a little bit. But whatever. That's was his objective. So anyway, I encourage people to go different direction than that one.
It
I'll add it to my list to get those videos that I produced back in 2010 up on our website again.
was that the guy that did it was like Hiking America or something like that, and he did it really fast with another friend, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he's the only one that I know of. My journals are at actually postholler.com when I hiked the whole trail in 2015, 2016. So I don't have videos, but I have my journal from the hiking it in 2015 and 16, and I identified about with Michael's help from the books and everything at 30 of the 32 conifers. And yeah, one was just I just totally missed the place where it was. It's my fault. I blew through hiking, and then the other one that I missed was the Baker Cypress, but I didn't at that point I didn't feel like going down into the drainage where it was. But I mean, I didn't allow enough time to get into Syed Valley and stuff. But it was easily to identify 30 of the 32 conifers, and the last one was identified within a couple miles of the Pacific Ocean. So it was like along the whole way, you identify the conifers.
Well, I guess that's a reason to go back, right, Mary? It's like, oh, well, now you need to go find those other two and
I
see
need to
them.
I need to find the Baker cypress.
That one is about half a mile off the trail. That's not an
Okay,
easy.
yeah. So
I
Yeah.
did just put a link in. This woman, Jen Wall, hiked the Bigfoot Trail this year, and this article just came out on the website called The Trek, maybe late last week, and it's her whole account, and I think she did a pretty nice job with that account. So it's a new source out there.
Nice. And it sounds like open invitation to any hikers out there, create some videos of your experience and upload them. Yeah, because not a it's there's still not a lot of folks who have heard unless you maybe live regionally. But the more that the videos come out, and yeah, I'm excited to check out that article on the trek. Jen also hiked the Oregon Desert Trail. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's nice to have that another voice out there.
Mhm.
So I have a question from Dana. What kind of public transportation access is available for someone who wanted to come out and volunteer?
Okay, so that's a great question. So the volunteer scene, what we do, and I'll just start there and then I'll talk a little bit more about transportation, but we typically announce our trips at first to our members so they kind of get the choice, their choice there in about late February, maybe a little bit earlier. My goal would be early February this year. So we announce those trips, people can start signing up, and we start building lists of people and start communicating with those lists. And we often have lots of carpooling that goes on. So, for instance, Karen's on the call today. We had somebody fly in from Scotland this year. Karen met them in Sacramento or somewhere around there and drove them with them to the trailhead. I mean, how convenient is that, right? So we have a nice community where we support each other and we try to, get volunteers that want to participate to where they need to be. So that's like an extreme example, but I think it's a good one. So yeah, so if you're interested in volunteering with us, and I know there's some members that are on here right now, so they're familiar with this, but I'll just say, you can sign up for our volunteer list, or if you sign up for a little membership, which, we give you a map set and all that stuff for $30 a year, you'll be the first to find out about our exclusive trips that sometimes even come with an adult beverage at the end of the day, depending on what national forest we're working on. So.
Nice. Another question from Jim. How long does it take to hike the whole trail?
So I did it back when I was in really good shape in 18 days. It's about 20 miles a day, but I would encourage a month. I think a month is a good amount of time for someone first exploring the Klamath Mountains. There are some low parts too, so it can be very hot, particularly in the lower Trinity River country. So sometimes you just got to take your time. And I think that's what the intentionality of this trail is like take your time and learn what's around you.
Yeah. And next question, what's the best time of year to get out there and explore the trail?
When I first hiked it, I started on the summer solstice in the south, and it worked out perfectly. Um, but with climate change, things are a little different. I mean, it's crazy to think 15 years later, you have to reconsider how you hike a trail, but that's our new reality. Um, mid-June, it could be way hotter than it used to be. So that early heat is creeping in. And then obviously you've got the threat of fires, and Mary can speak to this because her experience, she was stopped in Hayfork for a little bit because of a fire. But I would say, because of high water, there's a couple of high water crossings in the Trinity Alps and the Marbles in particular. It's really best to start in kind of very early summer, late spring, or if it's a low water year, which we had in 2016, 17, 18 with the drought. I mean, you could have started in February. So it's kind of year to year. But that, I don't think enough people take advantage of fall hiking. The Klamath Mountains, plenty wet. So there's maybe not as many water sources, but definitely still water available. There's maybe a 15-mile stretch in the Red Buttes where you have to, it's 12 miles, where you have to carry a little bit extra water. But that's between two very dependable water sources. So anyway, point is, I think September and October are absolutely spectacular out there.
Yeah, fall hiking is some of my favorite. And I'll say after, the Oregon Desert Trail, we have some 40-mile water stretches. So 12 miles sounds blissful.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah. Um, I've got one more question, then we can transition to like broader discussion. So Michael, what do you hope hikers will take away from an experience on the Bigfoot Trail?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I hope that each hiker takes away what they want to take away, right? So you go in with an intention of what you're hoping for, whether it's solitude, whether it's seeing a new place, whether it's learning the trees. But for me personally, I think it really is that connection with what I consider to be the most amazing temperate coniferous mountain range in North America. I mean, the Klamath Mountains are basically second to the Southern Appalachians as far as wonders of diversity. We have amazing. I've written a whole book on the natural history of the Klamath Mountains if you want more, but there's snails, there's salamanders, there's obligate subterranean invertebrates. There we got caves all around, right? So you could find as many of you, if you've ever hiked the PCT through Marble Valley, there's a couple of caves in there that if you know where you are, you can kind of creep into those. So, anyway, my point is the diversity of this mountain range is unparalleled on planet Earth. And I just think whatever story you can fall in love with out there, that's the story I want people to take home. And for me, it was obviously the trees.
Nice. I know there's some folks here who have hiked it, Mary, and there's other avid volunteers. I'd love to hear from you. What have you taken away, or what do you love about this part of California? And what do you love about the Bigfoot Trail?
Well, it's kind of a hidden place, I'm really attracted to trails that are out of the ordinary. I mean, a Pacific Crest Trail is fine and the Continental Divide Trail, but I like stuff that's more local and that highlights local diversity and the local special things in your area, and so I really like that. Plus the challenge of the hike. It's a challenging hike. It's not a beginning hiker hike, although you can do a lot of it as day hikes, but that's just what I just loved going also from the mountains over to the ocean. I mean, you hit everything there, so that was pretty cool.
Nice. I think Karen, you were mentioned a couple times. Do you have anything you'd like to share? Maybe why you volunteer and why you are a part of the effort?
Well, I love the wildflowers up there. If you time your trips to the various elevations, you can see some spectacular wildflower displays, some rare wildflowers. It's really fabulous. I know it's supposed to be all about the conifers, but the wildflowers are incredible too.
Nice.
And
Any other?
I'll just say real quick, we are working to expand our reach to have just nature trips this year and to do things like learn the trees, see the flowers over maybe a short weekend. So I have high hopes that we'll have at least one trip like that planned. So you don't have to join us for work, hopefully, into the future. If you
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So Pip is on here, who's working on the Blue Mountains Trail in northeastern Oregon, and they recently put out itineraries for, say you want a spring wildflower hike, or maybe you want to see the colors, fall colors, or maybe you want to see the big trees, or different little tastes of adventures. Maybe you want photography. So it's a great idea to provide some context and ideas for different seasons, different adventures. So yeah, I think that could be a great addition.
The Bigfoot Trail goes through some amazing areas that have been burned, and I would like to start encouraging people to think of fire as an integral part of the ecosystem. And then there's some excellent places where it's burned really mildly, kind of, it isn't like drastic, stand replacing burns, but some places like in the Russian wilderness, it was just an amazing, it was like textbook fire effects, like when I was doing prescribed burns for the Forest Service, and it was something that I would have strived for. I mean, it was just absolutely textbook effects, it was killing the tiny trees and like make everything, but it was like totally within the range of what should be happening there. But it's amazing to people that they don't understand that fire can be a good thing, and that it's not necessarily the thing that you avoid and you don't want to look at. And it can be, the Bigfoot Trail is at a place where fire can be showcased as a good effect.
That's a really interesting point, Mary. Maybe, there could be some more education around what is fire, what is a healthy fire, what does that look like, how can you notice it? Because I think a lot of times we're overwhelmed by these big mega fires that sterilize the ground. And, there's nuance to it and understanding that. And then Mary's given some great presentations about, how to hike in fire when there's fire danger, right after a fire, and sort of, I think there's a lot more that the hiking community could gain from being better versed in fire in general, all kinds of fire. Yeah. I want to open up the floor. Anyone have something they want to chat about, or again, more questions? I know there's a few more questions in the chat, but you can come off mute and go ahead and dive in, or I can continue to facilitate. Dana, you came off.
Hi. Yeah, I was wondering a couple of things, but I'll just do one so other people can talk. Um, do you have like a GPX track to connect the Bigfoot Trail with the Oregon Coast Trail?
Well,
Already done?
the trail ends in Crescent City, right at the ocean. So I'd imagine it. Well, I know that it crosses the California Coastal Trail. Does the California Coastal Trail connect to the Oregon Coast Trail? I guess it does, right? I'm not even sure.
I'm not sure, but that's a
Yeah.
good California Coastal Trail. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, Crescent City is what, 15 miles as the crow flies from Oregon, I'd guess.
Mm-hmm.
So
The California Coastal Trail, it goes at least to the Oregon border. I've hiked from the Oregon border down to Crescent City. So
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I love thinking of ways the trails can connect into each other. Good question, Dana.
I'm trying to connect them right now. So yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yeah. There was another question in the chat about the trail work. So how do you focus on the most degraded or obscure sections, or how do you decide where to do your projects?
that's how it started. Was Yola was really tough. Parts of the Siskiyous were really tough, so we focused our energy there. But now we're chasing the money a little bit too, because it's hard to fund all this stuff. So we are branching out. But yeah, we definitely have three high priorities are the Yola, which actually is probably, thanks to Karen and others, in better shape than it's been in many estimations since the 1980s. After this summer, there was a CCC Backcountry Trails program, and we spent 3 weeks back there, volunteers. So that is just amazing. I mean, now it's got snow on it, and the trees are going to come down this winter. But still, it's like it's going to be much more navigable than it's ever been. And then the Upper Woolly Creek and the Marbles is a really tough spot, but we've spent many hours back there this summer. So that's getting better. There's about 5 miles, 4.5 miles that still need some work, but that's going to happen next summer, it sounds like. And then there's just the kind of a constant need for work in the Siskiyous. And these are all places that are like 8-10 miles from trailheads, right? So these places are really hard to get to. So the same thing in the Siskiyous, we're trying to prioritize getting back there and maintaining. I showed you that picture early with Jacob's dog in it. That's just a spot that we will always have to be working on. So those are the 3 rough spots on the Bigfoot Trail.
This is a very timely question. So I'm sure a lot of us have heard there's funding cuts to the Forest Service, especially with seasonal workers. How is that going to affect, or do you know yet how that's going to affect your work, Michael?
Yeah, we don't know. But I mean, we just got $300,000 from the Shasta Trinity. So, that happened 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, that's for 4 years. That's money's guaranteed for 4 years. And that's specifically for the Yola. So we are going to be prioritizing continuing to do good work and proving that we can do this work a lot cheaper than maybe Forest Service employees can. And maybe we'll hire those temps that didn't get rehired to come out and do the trail work with us. So I don't know. I don't know how it all works, but right now we're very happy with where we are and the funds that we have in place to get some cool stuff done.
That's good. It sounds like that's a real positive, especially because I think a lot of us have been wondering how's that going to affect the trail work, and is there even going to be more deferred maintenance on sections? But it's another opportunity to partner with the trail organizations like yourselves
Yeah.
to have the volunteer groups do the work if the seasonals can't.
And we're very fortunate. Our forests have amazing recreation folks on them, you know, and they work with us. They touch base with us as soon as, you know, for instance, the Klamath had a little bit of money that they needed to get rid of, and because it was going to go away, and so they were able to draft up a really quick agreement for specifically for horse packing, and we were able to support some horse packing into the Shelley fire with that money, you know, to get firefighters in. They leaned on us and they said, "Hey, can you pay this private packer to do this work?" And then, you know, so we just have my point is we have a really good relationship with the forests and the people that work on the forests, and I'm proud of those relationships that we've established, and they're going to continue to support us so as much as they can at an individual level.
Nice. So I'm curious, I just love the idea of the scavenger hunt for tree species. Is there anyone out in the audience that wants to bring that to maybe a trail near you, or it could even be your own private scavenger hunt in your park or your favorite trail? I just think that's such an engaging way to get even like the kids, I imagine, to get the younger generation excited. Any thoughts out there about scavenger hunt ideas?
I like the idea of it being a scavenger hunt. I guess I always prepare before I hike and try to get up to speed with plants and in the area. So I guess that's I'm really interested in the idea of pairing like a guide like directly with a trail, and I wonder if that's something that Michael has thought about, or if I have Conifer Country. It's a great book. I really enjoy it.
Thank
But
you.
like this, and I have your Far Out app. But what if on Far Out people could have waypoints of the conifers and like spring ephemerals and things like that?
Yeah, I like that idea. We, you know, on the map set, which is actually geo-reference, you can put it on what's that app called that I don't use? It's not Gaia, it's the other one. Anyway,
Avenza.
Venza,
Topo.
thank you. So I've never done this, but I know it's geo-referenced, and we have all of not all of them, but the rare ones marked there. Mary is working with Far Out. Mary's a board member. She's working with Far Out to try to make it better. And we've definitely talked about adding waypoints for certain trees. You want to speak to that, Mary?
Well, yeah, I think we need to talk about that at a board meeting maybe, but I mean, you have to balance with like leaving the individual tree locations open. It's a good thing, but then it can be a bad thing too if people will just harm the trees or something like that, but is that what you're talking about, Dana? That most of the trees, or are you talking about other stuff
Yeah,
too, flowers and stuff?
Trees, like, or here you can see the spring ephemeral. You would have to be careful with that. I would definitely say that. I mean, are you talking about like the danger of illegal logging or something like that?
No, I'm just talking about people that would maybe go up to the third largest
Oh,
incense cedar, and then they would say, "Oh, I'm going to carve my name into that incense cedar," or do something,
yeah,
bizarre like that. So
yeah. People are probably generally more respectful than that, but you never know. But like Michael was mentioning the CDT earlier, and I know there's a waypoint in New Mexico called Baller Tree in the Boot Heel, and it would be nice to know a little bit more about Baller Tree, as it were, or conversely say like that. Yeah, here's the third largest incense cedar in the world, and
I think that would be some of the we could talk about that, adding some of the trees and some of the places where there's 17 conifers in the mile, and there's that one, the conifers that just appear that are mostly from the Rocky Mountains, but they do appear. next to the Bigfoot Trail, something, maybe trees of interest
Mhm.
would be a cool thing to add, maybe.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I imagine you probably don't want to give the exact waypoint because that gives the hunt, the scavenger hunt part. It's like, could you give a region like this
Yeah, that's a good
quarter
idea.
mile? It's up
Little
to you. Here's
polygon.
a
Yeah.
picture.
With botanical information too.
Yeah.
So like when the waypoint popped up, you'd be like, here's the little thing about incense cedars, or, look in this area maybe for the
Well-
third incense cedar's got to be hard to miss, but
Well, no, you're wrong though. This incense cedar, when I was looking for it, I was looking for a huge single bole tree.
yeah.
But it's not. It's like you look up in the canopy and it looks like several smaller trees. So you don't actually know that it's the largest tree until you actually get on it and see its trunk. And so it surprises you like that,
Interesting. Yeah. Great. Well, we're just at 5 o'clock. Any other sort of discussion items, questions y'all have, or thoughts about the region or the trail? Okay, well, thank you for everyone for participating. Don't leave quite yet. I have my next event has just been scheduled. So on January 28th, I'm gonna have Katie Salty Gerber on to talk about nutrition on and off the trail. So she's gonna talk about how healthy eating lays the groundwork for your outdoor pursuits and explore ways to elevate your connection to body, community, and the planet. So with that, that wraps up the event for tonight. Thank you for taking the time to attend and participate. Remember, I always welcome your ideas for topics or speakers. And if you know someone who would enjoy these conversations, please pass it on. You'll get an email from me. It might be the end of the week, it might be early next week, with an opportunity to provide feedback, a link to notes, and this is being recorded, so this will go up on the YouTube channel. So again, you can share it with anyone who wasn't able to make it tonight. So happy trails, everyone, and I can't wait to see what you do on your next intentional hike. Thanks for coming.